another episode. Good afternoon, Namaskar, and I'm back with another episode on winter bulbs. So let's wait for a few minutes to let others join in. So I'm going to be talking about winter bulbs today, the flowering bulbs. So I think we all love flowers, be it in any form. Flowers always make people better, happier, and more helpful. They are sunshine, food, and medicine for the soul. That's what I believe. So let me start the session by explaining what are bulbs. I'm sure many of you have been growing, many of you have been wanting to grow, and many of you sitting on the fence still thinking whether it's a good thing to start growing flowers from bulbs or from seeds or saplings. So bulbs are basically modified stems. It has got a layered structure with the plant shoot in the center. I'm sure we've all eaten onions, we've all cut onions. So onion is also a sort of bulb. So any plant that stores its complete life cycle in an underground structure is called a bulb. So it's got a basal plate, a very hard, thickened stem kind of thing. And over that, it has the layers and it's got the roots and the shoot. And most bulbs are perennials, which means you don't have to grow them again and again. You can keep them in the soil or in the pot and grow flowers year after year from the same one. Of course, they do have a life. Some bulbs do perish with time. It may be its natural cycle. It may be that it dies out and a new bulb comes in its place. Or it may also be that it gives out new shoots or babies and the original one dies out. I'll show you a few examples of a few bulbs. I think you can all see this is an Asiatic lily. So this is the shoot which is ready to grow. These are the tiny roots. And we have a thickened stem which is called the basal plate. Then we have the flattened ones. And I'll show more later as I discuss the various types of bulbs. So anyone can give me names of the winter flowering bulbs? Uh, so we have, let me see, do we have any answers? Good to see you again, Vanna. So we don't have any answers as yet. So let's not get too much there. But the most common ones that we know are the gladoli, which we all love when we see them at the roadside vendors also. We have the anemones. We have the Asiatic lilies. We have the Oriental lilies. We have the begonia, the calla lilies, the crocus. Now, the crocus is a very interesting one. We all know of saffron. Saffron belongs to the same family of crocus. And the saffron that we get is actually a part of the tiny flower in the center. It's not the petals, it's not the leaves. So do some research and find out what the saffron is. And you can grow them here. A bit difficult, but yes, you can. Then we have the beautiful nargis or the daffodils. We have the Dutch lilies. We have the freesias. And we have the iris, the more exotic ones, the ixia, the ornithoglum, or commonly called chinchirinchi. Quite an interesting name, isn't it? And we have the tiny oxalis, and it looks very pretty. It forms a full bunch. Then we have the ranunculus, which has become very popular in the past few years. It's of European origin, but very beautiful. It's also called, it looks like a rose. And we have the sparix. And of late, one flower that has caught the fancy of most gardeners is the tulip. We all know the famous Kokenhof Gardens of Holland. That's where it became the most popular. So tulips originally belonged there, but have become very popular in India. Very difficult to grow, not very easy, but yes, once you get the hang of it, you need the right temperature and everything, but you can grow. Uh, Here, I'd like to quote a very small thing. When flowers bloom, the bees come uninvited. But for our ecosystem, the bees are equally important. Where would we get our honey from? Where would we get our pollination from? Where would we get so many other things from? Okay, so moving on, just a little bit of technical detail, not too much, because I know everyone doesn't like to get into technicalities, but it's important to understand the life of a bulb and how it grows. So we have primarily five types of bulbs. Technically, they are not bulbs, they are different, but we all categorize them as bulbs. So we have the bulbs, we have the corms, we have the rhizomes, we have the tubers, and we have the tuberous roots. Now, bulbs, as I showed you about the Asiatic lilies or the Oriental lilies, they are very similar. They are made up of rings, even the daffodils, the hyacinths. Hyacinth is, of course, the summer one. They are all very similar, similar to what I had shown you. This qualifies as a bulb. Then we have the corms. So, this is a corm. This is a flattish kind of a bulb. This is the top. This is the lower part, a hollow kind of a center. This is the basal plate. So this is of the gladuli. I have one here where you can see a very tiny shoot coming. So as soon as this is planted, this will throw up its shoot. So corms are for gladuli, crocus, freesia, and so on and so forth. Then we have the rhizomes. Commonly, we've heard rhizomes akin to ginger. So we have the canna lily, we have the ginger lily, we have the iris, the lily of the valley. So what is the difference? It grows sideways. It does not grow very vertical, and it can throw up shoots at multiple points. Whereas a corm or a bulb will throw up only one shoot at a time. A rhizome can throw up multiple shoots. Then we have the tubers. So the tubers don't have any basal plate, like I showed you. No outer cover. It has no skin or peel, and it has got several growing points called the eyes. So what comes to your mind when I talk about tubers? Let's not just flowering ones. So we have the potato tubers. The potato is a tuber. We call it a vegetable. It's not a root, but it's a tuber. Now they have eyes and they can be cut and planted. You do not need to plant the whole tuber together. Most of them. Don't experiment, but be careful because flowering bulbs are expensive. So we have the begonia, we have the cyclamen, which are tubers. And last but not the least, we have the tuberous roots. So if you've dug up a dahlia plant or if you've dug up sweet potatoes, so they will be attached with one stem. There would be multiple tubers. So those are actually the tuberous roots. Now they can't be stored. You have to replant them again or you have to grow new ones. So technically, they are not bulbs, but yes, we do categorize them as bulbs. So dahlias, you can grow them from these tuberous roots. You can make cuttings out of the shoots and make new ones. Now, coming to the most important factor, how do we plant them or what kind of soil mix we take? So, as some of you would have attended my earlier sessions, I have usually used a uniform soil mix to avoid confusion or any problems, and which is the safest one, which is equal parts of garden soil, coco peat, and compost. Now, compost again can be vermicompost, it can be leaf mold, it can be fully dried and matured cow dung manure, and it can be a homemade compost as well. In fact, homemade compost is one of the best. But one thing should be borne in mind. If the plant which is going to grow out of these bulbs is very tall, then you need more of soil. It needs anchoring. So soil if your soil is too light or too loose, and if it's slightly windy or if it grows too tall and you've not staked it, then there is a chance that it may fall. So you need to anchor it well. An important thing while filling up your pots, again, 1 to 2 inch of gravel or your broken pot pieces for good drainage. Bulbs require very good drainage because if there is stagnant water, the bulb will rot. And once it rots, you cannot retrieve it, you cannot save it. Don't fill up your pots up to the brim. Leave it one third empty. Just fill it up two-third. And that will leave a little space for you to keep adding the manure, to add your stakes, and if anything needs to be done on top. How deep you should plant the bulbs? Now that will depend upon the size of the bulb. Usually it is the thickness of the bulb. Uh, Lower, suppose your bulb is about 2 inches or 3 inches, then just from the top, a small layer of soil should be there. Only the collar should be visible. For example, if I were to plant this, I would fill my soil till here. The shoot will go up. It should be visible. The collar should be visible and always tip upwards. I have one more here. This is a rain lily bulb. So if I have to plant it, I will fill up the soil till here. These shoots will be there. Then we have the tiny ones. This is a very tiny one. This is the Oxalis. So why I'm showing you these various types of bulbs is this will also determine how many bulbs do you plant in a pot or what size of pot should you take. So ideally it is 8 inches or 10 inches or 12 inches. And depending upon how healthy your bulb is or how big your bulb is, you can place them accordingly. Some amount of logic will work here, some amount of common sense will work here. So, for example, an oxalis doesn't require, as I showed you, it's a very tiny bulb. So you don't need a very deep pot for it. You can use the shallow trays. And maybe if the tray is about this big, you can plant about 10 to 15 in one of them. Of course, this is a brass one. You should look for an earthen one. Brass is not good for planting. This is just for showcasing. Similarly, for rain lilies in a pot, you can plant up to 8 to 10 bulbs. Some space needs to be there for it to multiply later on. So the size again will depend upon what you're planting. Now for a gladoli, you would need about 8 to 10 inches minimum because a gladoli is a tall one and you will need to add stakes and you need to have good anchorage. If you, I don't know if you can figure out, there is one gladoli at my back. This is a yellow stem which has just come out. So this, I can just pick it up and show you here. This is a 10-inch pot. Now, caring bulbs do not require too much of care. Manure once in a while, once a month is good enough. Once you've manured it while you have planted it, and once you've planted it, you need to water it well. And try and plant it towards the evening. All plants I recommend to plant towards the evening so that it does not face the harsh sun during the daytime and it gets time to stabilize. And once you've planted it, depending upon the weather, usually winter bulbs should be planted when the weather has cooled down considerably, like it is now. Now is the perfect time. Some bulbs you still need to wait, for example, like the tulips or the other exotic ones, for the temperatures to go down further. Don't rush into planting them right now, else you might lose them. In case you are planting them now, you feel you will not be able to plant them later, then you need to keep them in shade and you need to be very careful about the watering. Manuring, as I said, once while you've planted, then just about a handful once a month should be good enough. You can also add liquid manure. Liquid manure is usually a liquid made out of neem khali, sarson khali, and either well done cow dung manure or compost that is left with about uh, 5 to 10 liters of water. Stir it every day, put it in a drum. It will smell horribly. So be careful. Let it ferment for about week to 10 days. Week to 10 days later, you'll see some bubbles and dirty stench. But this manure works wonders. Then you are supposed to dilute it further and just give 1 mug to your plants. This liquid manure is one of the most fantastic things that you can do for all your plants, including seasonals, including ornamentals, vegetables, as well as bulbs. Watering, as I have emphasized over and over again, please water very carefully. Only when the topsoil is dry or damp. If it's damp, water it very lightly. If it is dry, just scrape a little to see how dry is it, and then take a call how much you want to water it. And I would recommend again watering early morning or late evening. Do not overwater. Don't shower your love by watering them, else you will lose your bulbs. Now, coming to another important part is when they start budding. So, when they start budding, that's the time when it brings most happiness and joy. And you know, finally, that your fruits of labor will be visible for you to enjoy. So, no special care taken except that you need to stake it if it is tall enough, or if it needs any support other than staking. Sometimes when it is spreading like a bunch in a pot, you need to add multiple stakes on the periphery and just tie a rope to sort of keep it contained or make it look more beautiful so that they don't fall to the ground. But that is a call you will have to take on depending on what kind of flowers or what kind of bulbs you have grown. Now, for the lilies, the Oriental lilies or the Asiatic lilies, they grow a bit tall. So you need a good anchoring for them. You will need good stakes for them, and they will grow straight up. So it needs a full sun. If you place them in slight shade or semi shade, they are likely to tilt. So care should be taken to place them in full sun and have your stakes ready so that you're not taken by surprise. Now, another important part is preserving them and propagation. Bulbs, when they are not in the flowering season, that's the time they multiply. They produce more babies. That's the time you can make your garden full. So it's best to leave them in the pots that they are. But if you do feel you need to rest the bulbs for a time, you can do it. Now, how do you know when to take out the bulbs? Once the flowers have dried up, the shoot will start drying up too. So once the shoot has started to dry up, stop watering the bulbs. Let it dry out completely. The shoot will detach itself, or with a slight nudge, you can pull it out. That's the time. Take out your bulbs very carefully. Just overturn the pot. Don't pull them out. Overturn the pot. Go through the potting mix to see small, small, tiny, tiny other bulbs. When it is a comb like thing, you will see tiny babies on the edge, on the bottom. And many times this comb will die out and you will see a new comb on top, which gets detached by itself. When you have bulbs like these, they will have bulbs on the sides. When I pull them out, they were attached like this, side by side, forming a big bunch. And for bulbs like these, you may get tiny ones, especially the amaryllis lily or the Easter lilies, which bloom in April, March and or April. You will see tiny shoots then. So just take them out of the soil, let them dry in shade for about 10 to 15 days. If you have the space, repot them. If you don't have the space, then wrap them in brown paper or in a jute bag and keep them in a cool and dry place to be planted the next season. But take care you don't forget them. Keeping them in the cupboard and just forgetting them, you will lose them. So sometimes we need to be very careful and you need to tag them as well. So best is I prefer to leave them in the pots, but yes, we do have a paucity of space, especially for those living in flats and apartments. You want to make way for the summer bulbs, and you just don't want them lying around. So then you have to learn how to preserve them for the next season. So gardening is how I relax. It's another form of creating and playing with colors. And the love of gardening is a seed once sown that never dies. So if you have any questions or queries, I can just go through them. I'll just scroll through them. Yes, now I see the answer. So Snimmer says gladiolus. Vandana says tulip. Smita says gladiolus again. Snimmer says Asiatic lilies. Neeta says hyacinth. Smita lilies. Hi Darshana. Hi, good to see you. So it's anything else that you would like me to share or answer your queries, please feel free to type in your questions, send them to me, and I'll try to answer them to the best of my knowledge. Now, procuring the right kind of bulbs is equally important. Healthy bulbs sources need to be known. So it's just a matter of trial because many of these bulbs are imported. Many of these bulbs are not propagated locally. So they would be expensive ones, but look for the locally propagated ones. Lots of sites online. A lot of people in the gardening circles would be having sources. You have the garden shops also. They also keep the common varieties are very easily available. And my recommendation would be if you are a first time grower of bulbs, start with the common varieties. Start with the most easiest to do. And I find Gladiolus the easiest to do. It's a no care, no maintenance flower. Well, Snibberus, can Dutch Lilium do well here? Yes, it can do well here. In fact, most of the Liliums are originally the Dutch lilies. The hybrid varieties of Gladiolis that you see mostly are the Holland varieties. Hyacinth is basically a summer bulb. It's not a winter one. But there would be some varieties. These days, we have a lot of crossover flowers. By crossover, I mean which can grow in summer and winter as well. Like we have vegetables all the year round, the summer variety and the winter variety. We have the flowers also, which are the summer variety and the winter variety. So, according to the season, according to the weather, ask your vendor or shopkeeper for the variety which is suitable for that time of the year. So I'll just wait for a couple of more minutes. Uh, Another important thing is that some flowers, some bulbs do extremely well. For example, the tuberose or the Rajnigandha. It's a summer bulb and it multiplies very fast. Just a few bulbs will fill up your pot very soon. And if you plant it at the right time, it can give you multiple blooms, which means even during the season, it can give you blooms many times, not just once. So I'll just show you. I have a pot full. So this is, I had separated out and planted about 5 to 6 tuberose tubers. Tuberose, again, the bulbs are called tubers. And this has filled up my pot, and I've already enjoyed the blooms during summer. And now I will let them remain in the pot to make more bulbs, and maybe just before the onset of summer, maybe take them out once and repot them again after a gap of 10-15 days so that I can change the soil, I can aerate them a little and get better blooms. But then tuberose is one hardy tuber or bulb. It's a very easy to take care bulb. So be very sure of what you are doing before you pull them out, lest you should lose them. And of course, we don't want any casualties or we don't want any mortalities, especially the hard fruit of labor should be enjoyed, not lost. And to get good blooms, regular manuring, as I have mentioned. Well, that's a nice one, Swimmer, that you bulbs in the past and the Mali managed to kill them. Like I said in all my sessions, be the head Mali yourself. Start doing things yourself and you will never lose any plants. By never, I mean if your mortality has been, say, about 10%, 20%, or 30%, it will drastically go down to, say, 1%, 2%, or 3%. And getting hands on knowledge is the best thing. And until unless you dirty your hands, you will not get that. And the joy and satisfaction of doing things yourself gets multiplied many, many fold. And you will never have to face this problem of the mali killing your plants, be it any, be it ornamentals, be it bulbs, be it seasonals, be it annuals, perennials, any plants. And gardening is no rocket science. It's something which we have literally been born with. We've just forgotten it. So we need to revisit it and we need to redo it. So go ahead and get yourself a few bulbs, get started. And one thing I do promise is that even in the summer heat, they will still give you that greenery. So if they're not giving flowers, they will still manage to remain green. And they don't ask you for much in terms of care. So loads and loads of TLC, tender loving care, will have your garden happy, smiling, blooming. That's all from now, for now, from me. And if you wish to learn or know more about any other topic, please feel free to leave it in the comments here or send a message to Connect GK, and we shall take that up in the coming sessions. Bye bye. Yes, that's true. Simmer says the lockdown has made me hands on. I think we've all become hands on, most of us. And that's a good thing because it makes us more grounded. It makes us connect with Mother Nature. Thank you, Vanda. Thank you, Neeta. Thank you all for joining in. Thank you, and bye bye.